The city skyline gleamed like molten gold that morning, sunlight spilling through the glass walls of the 32nd floor. But inside that vast, sterile office, filled with luxury and silence, there was only bitterness. Evelyn Hart, the once celebrated architect and now paralyzed millionaire, sat in her wheelchair facing the window, her reflection fractured against the skyline she used to dominate. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the wheels, her once confident posture replaced with quiet despair. Another assistant had just quit. The fifth one this month. She had become infamous in the city's business circles. Cold, unapproachable, cruel even. No one lasted a week working for her. They whispered that it wasn't just her body that had broken in the car accident 2 years ago. It was her spirit, too. But all that changed the day a quiet man with tired eyes and a gentle smile walked into her office. His name was Caleb Morris, a single father desperate for work, holding his life together by threads of hope and the love for his little daughter, Sophie. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the strength of the human spirit, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Soft Voices. Your support helps us tell more stories that touch hearts like this one. Caleb wasn't what Evelyn expected. He wasn't dressed sharply, like her previous assistants. His shirt was a little wrinkled, his shoes slightly scuffed, and he spoke softly, like someone who had learned the power of quiet resilience. Evelyn's first thought was that he wouldn't last a day. He had that look of someone who carried too much weight already, and she didn't want to be another burden. The first few days were torture for both of them. Evelyn barked orders from her wheelchair, testing him the way she had tested all the others. She threw files, snapped at the slightest delay, and made unreasonable demands. Caleb didn't raise his voice once. He just listened, took notes, and kept working. Filing documents, pushing her wheelchair to meetings, arranging her appointments, and learning every detail of her company's operations. By the fourth day, Evelyn noticed something unusual. He never complained. He never looked scared or angry. And one evening, as the last light faded over the city, she found him quietly adjusting the blinds so the setting sun wouldn't glare into her eyes. She hadn't asked him to. It was such a small thing, but it stirred something deep inside her. What Evelyn didn't know was that Caleb understood pain far too well. His wife had passed away 3 years earlier from cancer, leaving him alone to raise Sophie, who was only 4 at the time. He had learned to hide his grief behind tired smiles, to keep going no matter how hard life pushed back. When he saw Evelyn's sharp eyes and broken spirit, he didn't see a cruel woman. He saw someone who had lost more than she could bear. The first time Evelyn truly spoke to him was on a rainy afternoon. The city was drowned in gray light, and her usual meeting had been canceled. Caleb brought her coffee and was about to leave when she said quietly, "You have a daughter, right?" He froze. "Yes," he said softly. "Sophie, she's 6 now." Evelyn looked at him for a long time, her voice trembling slightly. She's lucky to have a father who stayed. That simple sentence broke something open between them. From that day, the office began to feel different. Evelyn started asking about Sophie, and Caleb would show her little drawings his daughter made. In return, Evelyn began sharing stories of her old life, of the buildings she designed, the awards she won, and the accident that took it all away. She had been driving to a charity gala the night her car spun off the highway. She woke up paralyzed from the waist down. Her fiancé left a month later. Her friends disappeared soon after. What remained was money and pain, both equally heavy. One morning, Evelyn watched Caleb arrive early, his shirt damp from rain, but his face bright because Sophie had drawn a thank you card for him to give to his nice boss. Evelyn smiled for the first time in years. It was small, fragile, but real. She didn't say anything, but Caleb noticed. From then, something in her began to heal, slowly, silently. As weeks turned into months, Evelyn's harshness faded. The staff began whispering about the miracle, the man who lasted longer than anyone else. But Caleb never saw himself as a savior. He saw her as someone who needed a reason to believe again. He started taking her out of the office, into the world she had shut out. He'd wheel her to the rooftop garden to feel the sun, or to a park nearby where children played and laughter filled the air. At first, she resisted. Then, one afternoon, as she watched a group of kids running through the sprinklers, she whispered, "I used to think the world forgot me." Caleb looked at her and said gently, "Maybe it was waiting for you to come back." That night, Evelyn sat alone in her penthouse, looking at her reflection in the glass. For the first time in years, she didn't see a woman trapped in a wheelchair. She saw a survivor. The next morning, she told Caleb she wanted to redesign her company's headquarters to make it accessible for people with disabilities. "If I'm going to build," she said, her voice steady, "then it's going to be for those who think they can't stand anymore." Caleb helped her every step of the way. They worked long hours, sketching designs and coordinating projects. Slowly, Evelyn's name began to rise again in the business world. But this time, not as a ruthless millionaire, but as a woman of compassion and courage. The project became her redemption, and Caleb, the quiet man who believed in her when no one else did, became her closest friend. Months later, at the grand opening of the new headquarters, reporters gathered to interview her. Evelyn sat proudly in her wheelchair, her company's new logo shining behind her. A phoenix rising from ashes. When asked how she managed to rebuild her life, she looked at Caleb standing beside her and said, "Sometimes, you don't need someone to push you forward. You just need someone to believe you still can move." The audience fell silent. Even the reporters seemed moved. Caleb smiled, humbled, and glanced at the crowd, where little Sophie waved proudly at her dad. Evelyn looked at the girl, her eyes soft, and whispered, "She's the reason, isn't she?" Caleb nodded. She always was. Later that night, as they stood by the windows overlooking the glowing city, Evelyn said, "You saved me, Caleb." He shook his head gently. "No, Evelyn. You just needed someone to remind you who you were before the pain." She turned to him, tears shimmering in her eyes, and whispered, "Then thank you for reminding me." The camera would have zoomed out at that moment if this were a movie. The city lights reflecting off the glass, two people who had lost everything finding strength in each other's brokenness. It wasn't a story about pity. It was a story about healing, about how even the coldest hearts can thaw when touched by genuine kindness. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Soft Voices, because somewhere out there, someone needs a reminder that compassion still exists. Special request in the comments. Write, "Kindness changes everything if you believe one person's empathy can heal another's broken world."